First, you're going to pick out two different fur colors, one for on top and one for the underside. Then you're going to remove your cat from the workspace. Now you lay out your fur onto your table. You're going to trace your pattern pieces onto the fur and make sure you do those notch marks because that will help you line up the tail pieces once you are pinning it together. Then you're just going to cut them out. After you cut it out, you're going to want to defluff the fur all along the edges. Remove the cat from the workspace. Then you're going to trace your next pattern pieces onto your other color of fur, and again with the notch marks to help you line it up later on. Then you're going to start cutting it out. It can be very helpful to kind of go along the furthest edge of what you've traced and then remove the entire section of fur that you're going to be cutting so that you don't have to be working with this huge piece of fur. You can get a lot more maneuverability and get into those weird angles that you have to deal with because of the curved shape. Then you're going to remove the fluff again and just toss that in the garbage. There's no use for it. Then you're going to start pinning your pieces together. We use binder clips because regular pins are just not super helpful with fur. Fur's just too thick, so binder clips help keep everything together. And, you know, there's less of a poking risk, so that's an advantage as well. You're going to start sewing your pattern pieces together and make sure you go over it a couple times at the start and at the end so that it's not going to unravel. Then you're going to pin these next pieces of fur together, starting at each end and then going with the notch marks so that everything's lined up correctly. Things can get a little funky when you're working with curves, which is why you do the ends and work your way in, and then those notch points can help you line it up even more. And just make sure that you're not going to get any funny bunches or birds nesting or wind up with pieces that don't line up. Then you're going to sew those pieces together and remember to go over the edges a couple times so that nothing is going to fall apart later. Then you're going to brush your fur. It can give you just a better idea of what it's going to look like at the end. Then you're going to be pinning all the way around this big piece. Later on, you're going to leave a hole on the side, and you're not going to be sewing the base of the tail. So you're sewing everywhere except this hole and the base of the tail where the elastic is going to go later. This hole is going to be a couple inches in from the edge, and it's going to be where we stuff the tail after everything's all sewn together. So it'll be about 4 fingers wide. And then you can continue sewing just as normal after that hole. We're gonna sew it again later. So now what you're going to do is measure out your elastic. About 3.5 inches is good. Then you're going to put that inside of the base of your tail and pin that in, and then you're going to be sewing that. And just leave the other hole alone for now. Then you're going to to sew that in, you're going to want to go over everything a couple times because elastic is very hard to keep stable in most sewing projects. So just going over it a bunch of times will help keep it stable and not gonna rip it. So now we're going to work with the hole and just turn your tail right side out. Now you're going to grab a bunch of stuffing. This is going to be way more than you need, but you're going to fluff it up before you put it in the tail so it doesn't get lumpy, and make sure you go all the way to the tip of the tail right from the start because it is a lot easier to do it that way right off the bat than go back and try and fix it later. Now, once you're finished with that, you're going to brush the fur away from the hole so that we can sew it up properly. It's a good trick to help keep things a little bit more tidy. And what we're going to do after that is start taping that fur in place so you're not going to wind up with a massive mess that's frustrating to work with. Then to close it up, you're going to do a ladder stitch. It's not too difficult to do. If you need to, you can look up how to do it, but it's not very difficult. Then you're just going to take your tape away and give it another brush so that you have your completely finished and nice and tidy nub tail, and you can go off and have your nice furry adventures.
Woo! Floof!